How are things going? Kiana, I see you've already turned in some things for this lesson we haven't even done yet.
Oh yeah, you know, I got bored at like 3 a.m.
Uh,
Yep.
yeah, I have a question. Do you guys see on your left-hand panel in your canvas, do you see, should say home announcement modules grades, do you see Nectar AI in the list between grades?
Yeah,
You do? Okay.
yes.
I'll let you two in on a little secret. That's going to be our AI assistant subject matter expert for your technical writing final.
I
Your,
don't know
I
what that
see it
means.
too.
Okay.
so your technical writing final project is going to span the weeks 13, 14, and 15. And you're going to be writing a technical document, a white paper. And to do that, you need somebody who knows all the stuff that you're writing about because you don't. You're just a technical writer. You don't necessarily know this stuff. So you usually have a subject matter expert, which is usually a person that you would talk to, like software developer or something, right? So I was like, how am I going to do that? I'm not here 24/7. So I made this AI assistant that I've trained on the stuff that we're going to write about, and you can ask it questions. It's pretty cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You don't want to make it about Honos?
Hmm. Tempting. Very tempting. Don't know how technical I could get about women. Although I do have a story. I was on the beach one day, went down in the morning, sitting there on the beach, and all of a sudden this huge turtle beaches itself right in front of us, which I've seen before, but it's still kind of unusual and special. But I noticed it had a hook in its mouth with some fishing line coming out.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I ran down to the lifeguards tower and it's like, hey, there's a turtle down here with a hook in its mouth. And they're like, oh, yeah, whatever. It'll work itself out. It's like, what? Really? So I walked back, sat there. I guess enough people complained. Finally, the lifeguard came down and they called this like wildlife rescue place. And they came down and they picked the turtle up and he was not happy about that. And they took it away to their rehabilitation place. So hopefully he got better back from the
Good morning.
Good morning.
At least you got it help.
Yeah, I like to think he's out there swimming around happy.
How
Oh,
big was it?
he was huge. He was probably about 2.5 feet across. I have a picture. Maybe I'll send.
Uh, are you gonna be at the CTC tonight, Professor?
Uh, not tonight. Tomorrow is my night at the Watsonville CTC. Today I'll be there right after class until 2 here in Aptos.
Okay.
Are you working tonight?
Yeah, but tomorrow too. I can see you. I can, if you want to show me tomorrow.
Oh
You-
yeah. Welcome, Elise. How are you feeling? Are you over?
No, I'm not feeling very good, but it's just like this really bad headache. It's making me nauseous,
Yeah.
but I'm okay.
I got zero sleep last night because my wife, I think, has the same thing you had. It's like a stomach.
Yeah.
She was up all night.
So was my baby. Oh my gosh.
Um,
I feel it. That sucks. Yeah, he was having a active sleep, very. screaming every like 10 minutes. I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I'll sleep at some point, I guess.
I'm feeling like, well, maybe this afternoon I can take it.
I know, right?
Okay. Okay, small crew here today, but I guess this is it. The hardcore group. Okay, week 10. So what we're gonna do this week is we're gonna continue. This is like part 2 of the formal report stuff. And we're gonna look at conducting primary and secondary research. How to document your research information. And then the grammar part is colons and semicolons. So the usual, what you'll do is read all the Canvas modules, read the textbook sections. We're going to do an example of a primary search and an example of a secondary research as your assignments. And then we're going to analyze and practice colon, semicolon use as your grammar assignment. There's a little discussion and then quiz number 2. Things move along. We're already in week 10, quiz number 2, getting ready for exam number 2. So I don't have a lot of work for you to do because you got the quiz. Plus, people need to catch up. And almost everyone is behind. Oh. Oh, I need to turn on the. Okay, we talked about secondary research briefly before. So if you recall, primary research is research that you yourself would do. So that would be things like conducting interviews, doing surveys, observation, focus groups is a big one. And secondary research is you're doing research that someone else has already done. And you're just using that. So that would be published things, journals, those journals, textbooks, things like that. Secondary research. For secondary research, library databases are one of your best bets, and that's exactly what we're going to do in our assignment today. We're going to kind of go through it in class, at least how to get connected up and do the search and all that. So Cabrillo Library is a fantastic resource here. They have so much stuff online. Pretty much anything you want to research, they have it for you. So they have the traditional thing, they have the books, they have everything online as well, but they also have databases that they subscribe to, which are generally fed by journal articles from various journals. I showed you a couple last week, kinds that I get. A lot of government data, things of that nature. Okay. So also, obviously prints and ebooks are a good source. One of the things we're going to do in our assignment is see that you might do a search and find reference material that looks good, and that's great, but the real treasure there is they'll have a bibliography of their own at the end where they cite all the sources that they use. And you can go down there and start hopping through and really narrow down your focus. So here they're suggesting using the book's table of contents to kind of do the same thing. Find helpful citation to other resources. So yeah, books are dead trees. They get outdated pretty quickly as compared to online stuff. But still, for a lot of the things that you're researching, the background hasn't changed in a long time. So the other one that we mentioned, periodicals. These can be scholarly journals or trade publications or just regular newspaper magazines. Okay, so we have to talk about this. So searching the internet. So you might think, oh, that's my first go-to. I'm doing research. I'm just going to go to Google. Well, you can do that, but you need to be careful. Because the difference between all the things that I've talked about up till now and this is that some person or persons have done the work of curating all of that for you in a library or a museum or anything like that. Whereas on the internet, not so much. Anything goes. Anyone can go on the internet and say anything. Now we know it's true. So be careful when you use when you do research on the internet. Again, the same thing about finding the bibliography and cross references plays here as well. Probably the most interesting thing you can get from doing internet research is find information, but they will cite, hopefully they will cite the sources where they got their information, and you follow that rabbit hole down to get the original stuff. Now you know who said it, what's their what's their authority here? Are they a subject matter expert in their thing? Whatever. At least you know what you're getting into. I think we all know that a browser is something we use to search the internet. We're going to learn about keyword search when we do the library search assignment in just a sec. And we're also going to learn about how to do the queries in that search. So here's some strategies for doing searching. Obviously, define your search question. All the search tools these days can use natural language. That wasn't true in the old days. Very nice. As you're going through and you're looking through the bibliographies of the different things, make bookmarks on things that you think might be useful that you can come back to. The whole secret to finding good stuff on search is your keywords. We're going to use a scholarly web search, and if your keyword is more than one word, if it's a phrase, you need to put quotes around it so that the search engine will consider it as one thing. And then we're going to use the Boolean operators. Does anybody know what a Boolean operator is? Never heard of that. Okay, named after this guy George Boole way back in the day. And it's basically, well, we use it a lot in computer science. It's operators that relate to true or false things. And the operators are and, or, and not, basically. So you can combine keyword searches by adding these Boolean operators. You can say, I'm looking for this thing and this thing. It has to have both. The and is both, right? Or you can say, I'm looking for this thing or this thing, which means either one showing up is sufficient. And you can add not to that. You can say, I'm looking for this, but not that. And then it'll eliminate keywords that are in your not.
So is it like AI? Kind of AI? Is it like AI?
It's not AI, it's just Boolean operators. It's logical algebra to be precise. So it's just a way of combining statements that could be true or false. So in this case, for your search, when you're searching for a keyword, a hit of that keyword in some material is a true and a miss is a false. So by using these Boolean operators, you can finesse your search. We'll be doing this, so you'll see an example. Okay, Wikipedia. I love Wikipedia. I think it's great, but again, you need to be careful that these aren't exactly curated. They're developed by just crowdsourced, right? Anybody can really go onto a Wikipedia article and change it. And originally everyone thought, so Wikipedia is an encyclopedia made as a wiki page. The wiki page was something developed kind of back in the 90s by a guy whose name was Ward Christensen. And that was a way to make it so that everybody could make a web page, not just tech crazy people. So it uses a simplified syntax rather than HTML to make your, bullet points and bold and all that kind of stuff. And it allows pretty much anyone to just go to a web page that's in this wiki and click the edit button, which is something you don't get on a normal wiki page. And then you get the contents of the wiki page in this sort of plain text format with the simplified syntax. And you can just go in there and change it and then say save. And when wiki pages were initially introduced to the world, everyone thought, well, that can't work. Everyone will just go in there and screw everything up, which is true. But the secret to the wiki page and Wikipedia is that every page edit is kept as a history. Every change that was ever made to a page is kept in its history. And what you can do is you can go to a wiki web page, click the edit button and say, I want to revert back to the page as it was a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, whatever. So if there is some idiot out there who's editing wiki pages and they don't know what they're talking about and they're messing it all up, it's pretty simple to undo that. So that's sort of the secret to how Wikipedia and wiki pages in general work. Okay, but given all that, not the greatest source for research. Again, kind of like the internet in general, it can be good as sort of a starting point, backgrounder, but take everything you see on Wikipedia with a grain of salt, meaning might be true, might not be true. Not sure. Again, the real value here is that Wikipedia articles are supposed to, at the bottom, as I'm sure you've seen, show all the references to the source material that they use to create that wiki page. That's where you should start your research. Okay, I think I covered all these points, right? Yeah. Yeah, so how do you know if something on the internet is credible or not? Again, unlike the library, I'll use the analogy of you going to a museum. Let's say you go to a famous museum in New York. And you're walking through the museum and you see all these artifacts from history, and it's amazing. First of all, is that all the artifacts that they have on display? No, they have basements full of stuff, right? And so someone decided what to pick out of their collection and put on display. And they decided this based on reasons. Sometimes they have a special thing going, Leonardo da Vinci week or something like that, right? And they'll pick things out of their basement that are about Leonardo da Vinci and put those on display. Secondly, even all those things they have in their collection, they just don't randomly buy everything. Someone's curating this museum, and they're using their expertise and their knowledge to decide which things are important and credible to have in the collection and to put on display. So libraries are like that with books and online information. Someone very knowledgeable, a librarian, has curated this information for you so that there's a very high likelihood that anything you find in the library is a credible source, unlike the internet, right? Like it says here, they haven't undergone the editing or scrutiny of scholarly publication procedure. Well, that's another thing to mention. All of these scholarly articles, I don't know if you know this, but they're all peer reviewed, meaning, and I've written these articles and I've been a peer reviewer for IEEE magazines. You write an article and you submit it. Let's take a step back. So it kind of works like the request for proposal thing we learned last week. Typically, a journal will put out like, we're going to do an issue 2 months down the road about some topic, and they'll put out a request for articles. People see that, and maybe that's a part of their area that they are interested in as far as academics. Maybe they're a professor at a university or something. They go, oh yeah, I have some material about that, and they'll write up an article and they'll submit it to the editor. Great. Well, the editor will look at it and go, yeah, this looks like it, is a good candidate for our issue on that thing. But then it has to go through this process where it gets sent out to these peer reviewers. And these are other people that have similar risks and ability. They will look at the article and like when I look at them, I'm like, you didn't label your axis on the graph and you didn't cite your source here. And we go through it, right? And we make all these comments and we send it back to the original author and they have to edit it and resubmit it. So all the scholarly publication things have gone through this peer review process, which further ensures that they're credible sources. All right. The other thing about the internet is it's just constantly in motion. So I'm sure you've all had this experience where you grabbed a link on something, maybe you bookmarked it or put it in a paper or something, and then a month later you try to go there and it's not there anymore. That just happened to me this week for this class. I had an article on how to use semicolons for secondary information. And when I made this, whatever that was, 3 or 4 weeks ago, it was there. But when I always check before I publish, so I checked all the pages Monday before I published, got a 404 on that one. Not there anymore, so I had to take it out. So that's a problem. The second thing is they don't usually provide those references at the bottom, like where'd you get your sources? Some do, but most don't. So you can almost think of information you get on the internet is almost like entertainment. It has more of an entertainment value. And from that, you might be able to find the real research that you're looking for. Okay. So primary and secondary research, this is research that you're going to do, right? Or your organization is going to do. And we already mentioned this, different techniques you can use to get primary data for your primary research, surveys, interviews, observations, experiments, focus groups, pretty hands-on stuff. So we all know what a survey is. One of your assignments this week is to create a survey. And when you create a survey, think about these things. What channel are you going to use? Meaning, is this going to be a form, Google form on the internet? Is this going to be a letter that you send out, mail? Is this going to be part of a YouTube video or whatever? You have to decide what's the best media channel for this survey. And then you have to decide, who am I sending the survey out to? What's the population I'm sending it out to? And depending on what your goal is, you want to be very careful that you pick the population you believe is going to represent your goal. You want to have either a cover letter or an introductory paragraph just explaining, like, what's this survey about? Don't go crazy with a number of questions. People will just say, forget it, I'm not doing this. 5, maybe 10 questions. And when you make up your questions, you don't want to have questions that are like, well, might be this, might be that. You want to make the questions so that they can produce a quantifiable answer, a yes or a no, or pick one of these 4 things, so that you have some quantifiable answer, not just some touchy-feely answer. Avoid leading and ambiguous questions. Make it easy for them to return the survey. So if it's like a Google form or something, that's super easy. If it's a mail form, maybe including a stamped envelope with your address already on it. Try to reduce that barrier for the respondent to do the survey and get it back to you. Interviews. So I was talking to a few people before the class about our final project in this course. Going to take the last 3 weeks, as not including the finals week. And it's going to be technical writing project. And for technical writing, you need information, of course. And one of the primary sources to get information is through what we call a subject matter expert, or SME. And that's just the person who did the actual work, or people or persons, right? So you would talk to, say, if it's a software thing that you're documenting, you would talk to the developer of that software. And you would ask them questions about it. And so that would be this interview. So for our class, I made up an AI subject matter expert that you can interact with and ask questions, but we'll get into that when we get to the last 3 weeks of the course. But essentially it's doing this. You're going to interview your subject matter expert. So you have to locate the expert, prepare for the interview, be professional. You're using their time, which is highly valuable. I've been on both sides of this equation. And, you know, as a developer, you got deadlines. It's highly stressful. You're trying to get the stuff done. And here's this person from technical documentation coming to you, asking you all these questions. And it can be very frustrating. And so from the other perspective, as the person writing the technical information, you need to be sensitive to that. You're using their time, which is highly valuable. They're going to be snarky. You just got to get over that. So you want to be prepared, right? Don't just come in there and say, hey, how's it going? Tell me about this thing, right? You want to have a list of questions already prepared. So make your questions objective and unbiased. And watch your time. So, you know, you're going to set up a meeting with this subject matter expert person. Say, we got a half hour. And thank them, right? A lot of people use food, they bring donuts, something like that. So that's the interview. Okay, so observation. Often this is done in the form of focus groups. So your company develops something, whatever it is, say some software thing, and you did your interview, you wrote up your technical documentation, your user manual, how to, whatever it is. Great. But how do you know it's good? How do you know it works? How do you know people are going to be able to use this product via your documentation? The only real way to do that is to put it out there in a controlled trial and see what happens. So a focus group is where you would take all that stuff, you get some people who are, you know, fresh to this information. You don't want to poison the well, right? You don't want them to have any preconceived notions of what this thing should be. And you just set them up in a lab, kind of like the lab here. And you have your clipboard, you probably got your video camera, and you just say, okay, here's the user manual. See if you can use this product. And you do not interact with them at all. Don't answer the questions. You're just watching. And yeah, make sure that you got their permission to report. So from that, you'll see, how did it go? Was it successful? Did they have any roadblocks trying to, you know, get to a certain menu in this thing or whatever it is that they're doing? So that's kind of really the only way to know if what you did works. Experimentation, yeah, I don't know how many of you will get into this thing. This is more of like a lab kind of thing. A lot of psychology stuff is experimentation. But this is way harder than it might seem to come up with a valid experiment. It's sophisticated research. So probably out of the scope of this class. Okay, next thing, documenting information, which has nothing to do with the first thing. So what are we talking about documenting the information? I'm not talking about actually doing the documentation. I'm talking about citing your sources. So giving credit to information sources. Going back to what we talked about with the internet, it's the Wild West. How do you know this is real, whatever? This is how you know it's real. You cite your sources. Someone can follow down that rabbit hole and see the original stuff. So you definitely want to do this. It strengthens your argument. It's not just your opinion. And then you can protect yourself against charges of plagiarism. Did you just rip this off from somebody else and claim it as your own? So obviously there's a fine line here. We're using someone else's research. We're doing secondary research. So yeah, obviously we're using their work. Is that bad? No, that's fine. As long as you give them credit. And as long as you don't verbatim take what they said and just plug it into your document. We have an assignment about that, how to do that. Now, in your academic career, writing, you know, things for school, this was a big deal. Like you could get kicked out of school for this. In the business world, It's a lot less lax, but it's still important. Yeah, there's AI tools out there now that can detect plagiarism, so you'll get busted if you're doing this in school. But in business, no one's going to go through the work of, putting your reports through a machine to see if it's been plagiarized. But I'm not trying to tell you it's okay. It's not okay. I'm just telling you that guardrails are somewhat reduced in the business environment than the school environment. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of what I'm saying. In the academic world, documentation is critical, right? You can get kicked out of school, you can have a bad grade, whatever. But in the business world, it doesn't follow the standards that you learned in school. A lot of times you're writing something for your boss, and the boss is going to say it's by me, right? But you actually wrote it. And the sources that you use could be internal things that you don't know where they came from. They didn't cite their sources. You don't even know who maybe wrote it. Maybe they don't work there anymore. So it's a little bit of a different problem. However, yeah, if you wrote a report about some merger or something, and then it gets to the point where they're doing the business merger and someone has a question about something, you need to be able to go, let me give you the original source that came from. So it's just not your opinion. And then copyright and trademark violations, somebody can sue you. So what do you document? Any other person's ideas, opinions, or examples or theory? Any facts, graphs, any drawings that aren't common knowledge? Quotations of someone's actual spoken words or written words? You want to paraphrase, and we have an assignment about that, how to paraphrase someone else's spoken or written words so that you're using their ideas, but you're not using their verbatim work. And then any kind of visuals, photos, electronic media. So the fine art of paraphrasing, it is an art form. So here's generally what you should do when you aren't directly quoting somebody in your work. If you're just directly quoting, you can say, John Smith says, quote, blah, 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 and you can put verbatim what they said in there because you're citing your source. John Smith said this. That's fine. But if you're not directly quoting it and you want to use that information, you have to paraphrase. So what you can do is these 4 steps. So you read through the material as it originally is, many times as it takes until you're in your mind, you're like, okay, I think I understand what they're saying. Put that aside, don't look at it. Try and write your own version of what you believe you understood. Now bring it back and see how similar is it. Am I using the same grammar structures that they did? Am I using this, putting things in the same exact order, the same like parallel language they did? If you are, might just be an accident, or it might be, because that was in your brain from reading it. Try and change that slightly. And then go back and reread that original to make sure you have covered all their points, but you didn't borrow their exact language. Okay, so I mentioned doing actual quotes, right? So in these cases, you're quoting them identically, so it's okay to use their exact thing because you want the precision, clarity, and aptness of what they said. Okay. Yeah, if it's a super long quotation, like it's really not cool to put in quotations an entire paragraph that you just lifted out of some little thing. So you want to try to summarize that in your own words, and you can use these things. And according to Evans argues that in her book, Evans reported, and then you can use the quotation marks just around the parts which are the exact quotes that you're pulling out. Here's a little example. Okay, so citation formats. How do I document that reference? How do I make a citation? So there's 3 big styles here. We're going to study the MLA style in an upcoming module. I'm not going to do it right now. But I will tell you that it can get really complicated. Like the section in the MLA handbook for MLA citations is an entire chapter. And it's just depending on where the material came from, what language it was originally in, all these things. I'm gonna try and boil that down like I did with the commas, like these are the most often used citation formats in MLA form. And we'll do an exercise on that. That'll be part of your, one of the exercises in your final project. Okay, assembling and completing formal business reports. This is pretty boring, to be honest with you. We're just gonna go over it very quickly. So what we call the front matter of a report is stuff that we looked at last week. I had a slide about this. These are the things you should have in your formal report. The stuff that before you get to the actual meat of the report is what we call the front matter. So cover, title page, the transmittal letter, table of contents, that sort of stuff. Executive summary, I'll say. So when you're using the headings and you're numbering these headings, often, as I'm sure you've noticed, that front matter stuff is uses a different number format for the headings and titles than the rest of the body of the document does. Often we use the Roman numerals I, like that for that front matter stuff. And the title page, you have different options you can do here, but I mean, it just wants to say this is what the report is. If someone picks it up, they can see it at a glance. Oh, this is the report I'm looking for. That memorandum of transmittal letter is a form for a formal report, is one of the front matter things that kind of explains like why we're here, like why was this why is this document here? So it would be like answering what the topic of this thing is and how you were asked, who asked you to do it and why. Brief description of the project, and then if you want to, you can do just a quick bullet point highlight of its finding, conclusions, recommendations. Okay. Table of contents. We don't have to do that if you took the word course, or we'll take the word course. That can be automatically done for you if you do certain things. Same with list of figures, can be automatically generated in Word. Same with bibliography, cross references. Executive summary. This is the too long didn't read thing. So maybe the CEO will pick up your report, look at that title page, like, oh, this is the report I'm interested in. Open it. They want to be able to quickly see, should I continue reading this or not? So in the beginning section, you want the executive summary, which just kind of says this is what this report's about, kind of what we just mentioned. So they can decide, am I going on or am I stopping? In the body, again, this is pretty boring stuff, obvious stuff that we've already covered. So let's just keep going. Let's just keep going. We're going to go over this stuff in here. And then the back matter, stuff that we mentioned that Word can generate for you automatically, reference section, bibliographies, any kind of appendix that you might include from some other document. Usually they're just lettered A, B, C, D. And then those citations, again, there's these different ones. We're going to focus on MLA style. So the citations, again, if we're using Word, those would be automatically generated for you from your citations in the body of the document. Okay, well, great. Okay, we got 10 minutes. I think we'll do this in 10 minutes for the break. So your first assignment is we're going to do some secondary research. We call it secondary research as research someone else has done that you're just looking at. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use the Cabrillo library, and we're going to do some research to try to answer this question right here in step number 2. You're going to put your answer to that question that you're just going to grab out of this document that we're going to find, and you're going to paste it into the text box. Okay. So our secondary research is to answer 2 questions about 3D printed prosthetics and find an image of the first 3D printed prosthetic on. If you haven't noticed, this 3D printed prosthetics thing is our theme. That will be the theme of your final project. Okay, so we're going to look through these instructions in the slide deck below, and then we're going to try to answer these 2 questions, and then we're going to try to find a reference to this picture, and we're going to put that in the text box as well. Okay, so let's just do it. We're going to use the Cabrillo library. We're going to look at some journal articles. Okay, well, what do? First thing is, you go to the Cabrillo library. How do you find the Cabrillo library? Let me start over again. So there's a bunch of different ways to find it, but if you go to the main page of the Cabrillo website, you go to students, and you find library right there. Okay, and then the second thing you want to do is click on that search button. Okay, and then the next thing you're going to do is click on the advanced search. Did I search already? Advanced search. Next thing. In the search criteria box, set your search to first find articles, books, and more that contain the word prosthetics in the title, and then also have 3D printing in the title. Okay, how do we do that? How do we do that? How do we do it, Ryan? Okay, so this is where that Boolean thing comes in. So here I have my search filters. And the way they work is the very first one doesn't have the Boolean operator because it's your first one. What field in the document are you wanting to search on? So we said title. We want to say it contains, there's options here. Would be the exact phrase it just starts with. We'll just do contains prosthetics. Here's your Boolean operator. You can say and, meaning both of these things are going to have to be true before it's true. You can say or, it means either the first one can be true or the second one can be true for it to be true. And you can say not, meaning this one has to be false in order for it to be true, if that makes any sense. Okay. So we want both prosthetics and 3D printing in the title. So we're going to say and, still the title, contains 3D print. And then we click the search button, right? Did I say click the search button? Yeah, click the search button. Search button. And it goes chug, 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 and it finds all these things. Right? And see how it's highlighted in the title? The things, search terms we were looking for. Right? Okay. So what we're looking for is this one, open source 3D printing in the prosthetic field. We want to see the PDF for that. Okay. So we look through this list. Ooh, that's not it. That's not open source 3D printing. That's it. That's the one I want. Download the PDF file. They click that. And boom. There's the article. Okay. So here's our journal article that we see. So that's where we want to be. Okay, now we have to answer the question. 2 questions. So we follow the directions in the slide deck, did that. We're on step 2. Copy the following questions into the text box and answer them by finding the information in the journal article. So copy these 2 questions into your text box. I'll let you do that. How many US citizens suffered from upper limb loss in the year 2005? Okay, let's go back and look at our document. Make this bigger, huh? How's that? Big enough? Read it? Maybe a little more? Now it falls off the page then. Okay. And you just kind of read through this thing, Oh. For example, in 2005, 541,000 US citizens suffered from upper limb loss. That's the answer to question 1. And this amount is expected to double by 2050. That's the Institute segment. Right? So you just want to copy those sentences out of that thing, put them in your text box. That's the answer to question A and B. That's the step 2. Okay, now we're on step 3. Find the reference to the 3D printed upper limb prosthesis produced in 2012 RoboHand. Should be reference number 11. So this is also going to show you an example of what we're talking about in terms of cross-referencing. So you can either look through the article and see their references are all here, right? Till you see 11. So there's an 11, right? So you can just click on that, or you can go to the end of the article in their list of sources, right? Look at all the sources they're listed here. Right? You can go to number 11. Okay. And click on the reference link number 11, and then in the reference section, click on cross-ref link. So we're already in the reference section here. Number 11, we're going to click on this cross-ref. And this brings us to a different document. And this is kind of what I was saying about for secondary research. These are the rabbit holes you go down. You find your first initial article, that's great. Maybe that's a great article, and maybe that's enough for what you're trying to do. But the real value of that is they have their references that you can go down, right? Okay, so what we're looking for here is this picture, RoboHand. And what you do is you right click on that thing and you say copy image address. And then you paste that into your text box. Using the link tool in the text box to create the external link. So there's that little paperclip thing, I think it is, right? And you click on that, say I want to make an external link, gives you 2 choices. And in the text part, you say RoboHand, and then in the link part, paste that address that you just got of the document. And that's it, you submit. Any questions on that? Guess not. All right, it's break time, 10:30. Start the timer. We'll be back at 10:40. And there's a job fair here at Cabrillo on the 15th. So it'll be the day after that class.
Mhm.
Right here with a bunch of companies. You can go down there and
The 15th.
I believe it's on.
A job fair, that's like where you could apply for jobs, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
then the whole
It'll
thing
be
is
in
filled
the
up.
quad. I think it's in the quad. Should tell you more about it.
Mhm.
And yeah, they'll have tables there, different employers to set up, and you can just go by and ask them what jobs they have. And
Yeah.
if you have a resume already, you can give it to them. All right, we're back. Okay, so our next assignment is about paraphrasing. As I mentioned in the reading review, you need to avoid plagiarism, so you want to develop the fine art of paraphrasing. Like all writing, practice makes perfect. So the more you do this, the better you get at it. So yeah, paraphrasing is a fine art. You need to restate the original passage in your own words in your own style. So here's some steps you can follow to try to do a good job paraphrasing. I already mentioned this. You read the original material completely, maybe more than once, so you're like, okay, I got it. And maybe you don't even do like the entire article, maybe pick a paragraph or 2 at a time. I mean, typically, if you're using this for something you're going to cite in your research or add in your research, you're not doing the full article anyway, you're picking a paragraph or 2, okay? So read through that material until you got it, you think you got it, and then put it aside write your own version without looking at that original. Bring it back, make sure you have avoided repeating any exact grammatical structure of the original. By just, replacing words with synonym words. And then after you've made sure you're not exactly copying the thing, reread the original, reread yours. Did I cover all the points I was trying to get here? Did I do that without borrowing their exact specific language? Okay, our goal is to paraphrase a paragraph from a journal article. What you're gonna do, you're gonna read this original paragraph from that exact thing that we just looked at. And we're gonna paraphrase it and put that in the text box. So here's your paragraph, open source 3D, I won't read through the whole thing, you can do that. So yeah, read through this as many times as it takes until you're like, okay, I understand what you're saying here. Don't look at it. Try and recreate it in your own words. Look at them side by side. Make sure you don't have any exact matching structures or phrases. And then make sure that you're covering all the points that you cared to cover from the original. And then this is just a text box one. You just put that in text box and submit. I'll let you guys do that on your own. Any questions on that? Okay. Again, you don't need to do the actual citation thing there. It's clear that I know where it came from. I gave it to you. Okay, next assignment. Primary research. So recall primary research is research that you're doing, not something you're getting from someone else's primary research. And what we're going to do here is we're going to do some primary research to answer questions about an experimental trial that we've done. And we're going to try to use our primary research to answer some questions about how participants in this experimental trial felt after their experience using a 3D printed prosthetic arm. What you're going to do is you're going to create a survey, 5 questions to assess their experience using this 3D printed prosthetic arm. You remember when we talked about doing surveys, one of the questions was, what media channel are you going to use to disseminate this? We're going to use email. So this will be an email message that you're creating. And one of the other questions in that was, what's the population that you're going to survey? Well, for here, it's pretty clear. We're going to survey the population, which was all of the participants that were in our trial experiment. So when you create your questionnaire, make sure you've covered these 3 things. You have to have an introductory paragraph just explaining what the purpose of the survey is. 5 questions that you make up. Remember the bullet points about questions. You want to try and come up with questions that are not ambiguous and that will generate quantifiable results. So just asking a question like, how did you feel? That's not really quantifiable. You could say something like you see in the doctor's office. How did you feel on a scale of 1 to 5, or 1 is the sad face and 5 is the happy face, something like that. That's how they quantify something like, how do you feel? I felt a number 3. And then a closing paragraph where you say whatever you want to say in closing, but make it easy for them to return that survey. Have a link, and you're just going to make this up, right? But, have a, return this to this person email. Probably for email, that would be the easiest thing. They could just say return, right? So again, remember to use questions that produce quantifiable answers and avoid leading or ambiguous questions. Okay. How you submit? It's just a text box one. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, now it's time for our grammar session. And in this grammar session, we're going to talk about semicolons and colons. And if you had 156, we did go over this to some degree. This goes into it in a bit more detail. Okay, so first we're going to talk about semicolons. The thing I don't like about semicolons is the name. The name is dumb. Semicolon, what does that mean? Is it half a colon? Sort of like a colon? No, it has nothing to do with a colon. I don't know why it has the word colon in it. If I were in charge of English, I would have renamed this to semi-period. Because it's more like a period than a colon. It's nothing to do with a colon. They do different things. And calling it a kind of colon doesn't help. If anything, a semicolon is more like a period. So, did you know that in England, they don't really use the word period, they call it a full stop. So if you think of a period as a full stop, meaning I'm reading along in my sentence and I see a period, I take a full stop pause before I begin the next sentence. So if you get that kind of a mindset about what a period is, then you can think of a semicolon as sort of a partial stop, kind of like a California rolling stop. You take a little pause, but not as much as a period. And then you can think of a comma as a minor stop. So a comma is just a really minor little pause. The semicolon is more of a little pause, and a period is a full pause. That's one way of thinking. Okay. How do you use them? Okay, well, we've already seen a couple of uses for semicolon. We can use a semicolon to join two independent clauses instead of using a conjunction or the other things we learned. So here's an example. Please close the windows, semicolon, the room is too cold. We saw that. Okay, but joining independent clauses, we know of 4 different things we can do with 2 independent clauses to join them. By now, you are all experts at this. Number 1, most common one, is a comma and a coordinating conjunction, one of those fanboys. And, or, but, right? Or, as we just saw in our example, just a semicolon. Or, if you remember, a semicolon and a thing called a conjunctive adverb. However, so you have a bunch of punctuation going on here. You have the semicolon, the conjunctive adverb like however, and a comma, right? So there's like 3 pieces there. And our 4th option is you can always, they're independent clauses. We know they can stand alone as sentences, each one. I could have split it into 2 sentences with a period if I want to. All right, so those are our choices. When should we use a semicolon? And I think a lot of you are like, I'm going to use a semicolon for joining my independent clauses because I'm lazy and that's the easiest thing to do. It's just boom, hit that key, I'm done. I don't have to do a fanboy, I don't have to do commas, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's not really the reason you should use it. When should you use it? It's really about the 2 independent clauses and kind of how they relate to each other. So it's not wrong to use that semicolon to just join any 2 independent clauses, but where you really want to use it is in this case where they're very closely related. The 2 ideas, yes, they can stand on their own, they're independent clauses, they're very much related to each other. So much so that I really don't want to say comma and, I just want to make them even more put together. So here's an example. Revenues were plummeting. We decided to close 2 stores. So both of those things are independent clauses, right? I could say revenues are plummeting, period. That makes sense. We decided to close 2 stores, period. That makes sense. But you can see that these 2 ideas are very closely related. It's almost like one's the reason why the other. Revenues were plummeting. Well, because of that, we decided to close 2 stores. So they're very closely related. So that would be a case where rather than the comma and the fanboy, which we could do, revenues were plummeting, comma, and we decided to close 2 stores. But if you kind of think about that, it's almost like, oh, these 2 random things are put together. And we decided to do this other thing. But with putting the semicolon in there, it makes it very clear. We just decided to close 2 stores because revenues were plummeting. Right? So yeah, you can use period or a semicolon or a comma and a coordinating conjunction, but the semicolon has less of that stop that we're looking for. Okay, so that's case number 1 for using semicolon. Case number 2 for using semicolon, which has nothing to do with that other case, is to separate items in a series where each item contains internal punctuation. What does that mean? Well, it means that I have a list, right? And we know that in a list of things, we separate the items in the list with a comma, right? That was part of one of our cases for comma use. But what if the items in the list itself already have commas in them? Like this example. I bought an old, comma, dilapidated chair, comma, which was made of leather. So that's one item in my list. All of that is one item in my list. I already have commas in there. If I tried to separate that item from the next item with just a comma, oh my gosh, I got all these commas going on. I don't know which one is just part of the first item in the list and which is separating. So we just go, look, we're going to use a different tool to do the separating. We're going to use the semicolon to do the separating here. Right, so I bought an old, comma, dilapidated chair, comma, which was made of leather. Semicolon, that separating that first item from the next item. Marble top table, comma, which was in beautiful condition. That's just one thing. Semicolon. And a gold rug, comma, which I purchased when I ran. That's just one thing. So if we're already using the comma in our list stuff, because it's internal punctuation, or some people say it's a complex list, then we have to use something else, the semicolon, as our marker for separating the items in the list. Here's another one. Recall from our comma exercise the other day that for locations, right, you have to use a comma, separate them. Omaha, Nebraska, you have to have the comma between them. Well, if I'm already using the comma for that, I can't use the comma to separate these list items. So again, we go back to the semicolon to separate these geographical locations that already have commas in. Does that make sense? Okay, yeah, so two different uses, totally unrelated to each other. So in other words, you can consider a semicolon just a glorified period. It's not a full stop, it's a partial stop, but you can use it the same way you would use a period. Although I'm telling you to reserve it for use only when the two independent clauses are closely related. I'm tired, I want to sleep. You can change it to I'm tired, I want to sleep. They're very closely related. I want to sleep because I'm tired. Or the whole second thing, which is unrelated, it can be used as a super comma, where you can separate things in a list that already have commas in it. Okay. I think that's the end of that, right? Oh, no. Oh, that goes on to colon. So before I move on to colon, I just want to mention that at this point in your writing career, you may not realize that you probably know more about writing than most of the people that you're writing to. Maybe even your boss. So you know all about semicolons now, but honestly, most people don't. And when they read something with a semicolon in there, they're going to be kind of like, oh, what the heck is that? I don't know what that is. What am I supposed to do with that? So maybe you want to reserve this for where you really absolutely need it. Now, separating a list of items that already have commas in it, no option there. You have to use it. Joining two independent clauses, you want to really use that tool only when it's really necessary. Because again, most people you're going to write to now at this point, you're way beyond what they understand as far as grammar is concerned, whether you believe it or not. Okay, now we're moving on to the colon. Like I said, it has nothing to do with semicolon, except they both have the word colon in the name. Okay, so we already know a few uses for this, right? We already know that for a formal business letter, it's colon for the salutation. I don't know how many times I created your, back when you were doing business letters and you were using commas. And it's like, no, it's colon. We also know that when you say a time of day, you put a colon between the hour and the minute. You know that, right? Those are obvious. Okay, but what's not maybe so obvious is you can use a colon between an independent clause and its list or explanation. So you've probably already seen this for lists, like in this example. The company will present 3 plays by William Shakespeare this summer. Colon, Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth. So first part is an independent clause. Now that's critical. You have to make sure that first part's independent clause. In other words, if I put a period right there and just stopped, would that work? Let's look. The company will present 3 plays by William Shakespeare this summer, period. Sure, that's an independent clause. Got all the 3 things you need, right? Subject, verb, complete idea. But in this case, we want to say, following that is the actual list of them, right? Hamlet, Othello, and Macbeth. Second example, I hate this one course, English. So I could say I hate this one course, period. That's okay, right? But here I want to give you the actual item or the explanation why. I hate this one course. It's English. And the last one, there's only one thing left to do now. Colon, that's why you still have time. So I don't know if this is going to make sense to you, but if you could think of the sentence as though we're in a math problem, you could think of colon as like an equal sign. In other words, the left-hand side of the colon is in some way equal to the right-hand side. One side either restates or explains the other side. Okay, let's go back and take a look. See if we can do that. The company will present 3 plays by William Shakespeare this summer. Now, if this was a math problem and I said equals right here, yeah, this side is equal to that side, right? I'm just telling you the actual list of things of that, but they are the same thing. I hate this one course equals English. Yes, English, the one course I hate, they're the same thing. There's only one thing left to do now. Confess, it's the same thing, right? We're just sort of restating or explaining. So I find that useful. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. The other thing about the colon is it's often used for its dramatic effect by introducing this dramatic pause. So I also think of it, I think of it as like the equal sign where the two parts are like equivalent to each other. And I also think of it as like the dum dum dum, you know, the uh-oh, what's happening? So I know who the killer is, dum dum dum, the cute bunny rabbit. So because of that, you want to save it, you want to use it only when you want to really get that dramatic effect. If you use it a lot, it weakens that. Again, like the semicolon, at this point in your writing career, most of the people that you're going to be writing to don't even understand a colon. Right? So you might want to keep this in your toolbox for only when it's really necessary. Okay, so like I said before, the part before the colon has to be an independent clause. If it isn't, you can't use the colon. You have to do something else. You either have to rephrase it so that it is, or go back to one of our other 4 ways, right? Like comma and. So here's some examples. Do not place a colon after a linking verb. So look at this example. The high school I attended was colon. Now, is that an independent clause? If I just made that a period, if I walked up to you and said, oh, hi, the high school I attended was, you'd be like, what's wrong with you? No, that is not an independent clause. It does not convey a complete idea. So you can't put the colon in. It doesn't work. I could change it to not use a colon, like I said, using an accordion, a conjunction, or just the comma separated, this kind of thing. The high school I attended was old, centrally located, and small. So here I'm just making a list using a comma like we learned, right? How could I rephrase this to still use the colon? What could I do? Any ideas? A couple of things we could do. I definitely have to take the was out of here, right? And I could change this. This has to be an independent clause. So you could say, I attended a high school, colon. It was old, it was centrally located, and it was small. You can do that. It's probably worse than this. That's more words than this, right? Okay, let's look at another one. Do not place a colon after a preposition. Here's our example. In college algebra, students learn about, again, if I put a period right there, is that an independent clause? If I just said to you, in college algebra, students learn about. No, doesn't convey a complete thought. So here's my list that's explaining what this is. There's supposed to like my equal sign, right? But I can't have that about there. So again, I could change it, get rid of the colon and just make a normal comma separated list. In college algebra, students learn about polynomials, complex numbers, and linear equations. Could do that. How else could I reform this sentence to still use the colon, but make this into an independent clause? One way I could do it is I could just take the about out. And I could say in college algebra, students learn. I could do this different ways. Learn about, I could leave about in here and add more. Learn about different things. That's an independent clause. I could use the colon then. Polynomials, complex number. Those are the different things that we're learning about. Okay, that's one way of doing it.
Would it sound right if it was in college algebra, students learn and then set and then colon and list the items? Or no?
Well, I would say no. I mean, you probably see that all the time, but I would say that's a grammatical error because that's not an independent clause, right? If I said in college algebra, students learn. Yeah, okay, that's obviously students learn, but here I was trying to say they learn about specific things. So yeah, it's kind of a gray area. I think you could do better, I guess is what I said. That works, but I think you could do better. Okay, and I think this is one that you probably won't use very often in your life. But if you're doing quotations, often you can use the colon to separate the introductory words that you have from that quotation. So there's a good example. The acting director often used your favorite quotation from Shakespeare's The Tempest, colon, and then the quotation. We don't do a lot of quoting in business stuff, so I don't know how useful it is. I'm gonna let you guys watch these on your own. This one's good. I'm on the fence about this one. Because it goes off into some weird directions that's like, you're never gonna encounter that. Why are we even talking about that? So this one's pretty good, but it really just covers the same things I just did. So if you still don't get it or you have questions or whatever, you can watch that video, but especially if you had 156, you already had this one, so I think you got it. All right. Any questions on that? Okay, so now that we've gone through that lecture, we're going to do an assignment. We can do this in class. What we're going to do, our goal is to correctly edit these sentences for commas, semicolons, and colons. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste both of these sections into the text box. And then we're going to edit the first part for semicolons and the second part for colons. So let me go into student view. And we'll do it together. Okay, so I'm going to copy all of this stuff. I'm going to paste it in here. I can get rid of this, I guess. We can do it in, whatever. All right, let's look at the first one. Let me make this big curve. This big curve. Is that big enough to see?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, I don't want to ride the, okay, I know, I said wanna. People say wanna. I don't want to ride the Mega Sky Coaster. I'm afraid of heights, and that ride sounds terrifying. All right, so we're talking about semicolons here. Where would I put a semicolon?
After coaster?
Yeah, I don't want to ride the Mega Sky Coaster. I'm afraid of heights. All right, next one. I want to get a pet turtle. However, I think it might scare my baby brother. Where should I put it?
I want to get after I want to get.
Keep going. I want to get a pet turtle right there.
Close enough.
Yeah, if you go back and look, there was that thing about the subjunctive adverb, however thing. Okay, next one. Some students do more than attend college. They have families and jobs that compete for their time as well. Where do you think I should put it? I think right there.
After attend college?
Yeah. Some students do more than attend college. They have families and jobs that compete for their time as well. All right, next one. I needed more time to study for my classes. Therefore, so this is a similar one to this. Therefore, I cut back on the hours I worked each week. We have this word here. That's our tip off. It has to go there. All right, and our last example. This is the other case for using the semicolon in your list with internal punctuation. Jeff lived in Springfield, Illinois, Seattle, Washington, and Orlando, Florida. How do I separate those items in this list? Come on, this one's easy.
After each city, state.
Yes. Point, that's one thing in the list. Point, that's the second thing in the list. So it's just like you were putting commas in, except you can't use the comma because we already used the comma. So, but the place and the reasons are exactly the same. All right, now we're on to colon. So here, think about that equal sign thing. Try to find the sort of the balance point in the middle where one side and the other side are the same, okay? That YouTube video has one thing I like, cats that talk. Where would you put the colon?
After like.
Yes. So that YouTube video has one thing I like, okay? Cats that talk, same thing, right? The thing I like is cats that talk. It's the same thing, equals. How about the next one? I have a few favorite classes at Cabrillo. Literature, psychology, and art.
After Cabrillo.
Yes. Okay, whenever you do this though, double check yourself. Is that an independent clause? I have a few favorite classes at Cabrillo, period. Would that make a sentence? Yes, we're good. Next one. Sarah studied hard for one purpose, to succeed in her college courses. So where do I find that balance point? Which right-hand side explains or restates the left-hand side?
After one purpose.
Yes. Yeah, very good. All right, and then our other use cases, I had those in here. Here's a salutation. To whom it may concern. It's a salutation. Yeah, you use that. And then time, yeah, everybody knows that. That screws it up. That screws it up. Okay, everybody got that? Mitt. Oh, yeah. I always go up to the top to get back out of student view because that's where the student view button was, but it's down at the bottom. Okay, that's one assignment down. All right, we have our discussion. Further talk on colons and semicolons. So what you're supposed to say are three things here. For colon, provide an explanation for how a colon is often misused. I've given you some already in the lecture. Don't do that, okay? You can look at those. Add an example sentence that represents this area. Same thing for semicolons. Provide an explanation for how semicolon is often misused. I've given you some examples. Come up with your own, things you've seen, things you've read, whatever. Make up an example sentence that represents that area. And then I always ask you this, what part of the module is confusing and unclear? Okay. Kiana, overachiever, already did this, 8 o'clock this morning. Or yesterday, you did that yesterday. 8 p.m. Okay. And then the big ticket item here, this is our next quiz number 2, CABT quiz number 2. This is not a module quiz, this is the real deal. Second quiz. So like I always say, read before you start. Make sure you're giving yourself plenty of good quiet time to finish this thing in one shot because you only get one shot. If you have accommodations with me, time's been extended. Actually, I haven't done that yet. I'll do it after class. Okay, so, the usual, we answer true, false, and multiple choice questions. We're gonna do, combining sentence using coordinating and subordinating conjunctions. I'm gonna write a persuasive email. You open book, you can use the reference module, 2 hours normally to complete the thing. You have all the way up through next class meeting, all the way through that. Okay. These are important. This is 40% of your grade. You need to get these done. Okay, even if you don't think you're ready, do it anyway. Some points are better than no points. All right, that's module 10. So what did we learn? We learned about primary research, secondary research, semicolon, colon use, and we did our quiz number 2. So as I mentioned, next week we start. So that was the last, yay, that was the last type of report from the textbook that we have to cover. Done with reports. From now on, we're going to talk about the job search and resumes and cover letters. And then the last 3 weeks are our final project. And as I mentioned, maybe you were off doing your bio break. During the break, I mentioned that if all goes well, next week, we're going to have a visitor on the Zoom from the career development department here at Cabrillo. She's going to explain all the resources that they have there for you to find a job and to write your resume, which we are doing as well. And then she's going to talk to you about the job fair, which is the very next day next week. So next class meeting on Wednesday. That Thursday here at Cabrillo in the quad, upper quad here, will be a job fair where many employers will be there that you can talk to. If you already have a resume, great, give it to them. If you don't, if you work really hard after next class meeting where we talk about how to do your resume, you could have one by the end of the day. Okay, I think that's it. Any questions? Get caught up. Few of you are nicely caught up, but most of you, still a lot of writing assignments that you haven't finished. You really want to have that stuff either off your plate or decide you're going to cherry pick. I just can't do it, I don't have time. Before we get into the final 3 weeks and you start your final project, you really want to have your slate clean for the final project. So that's all you have to focus on. Any other questions? Okay, as always, I will be over in Aptos CTC after class until 2.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye bye.